Imagine an aircraft, an Airbus A330 weighing over 200 tons, soaring through the inky blackness of the night sky. It's a metal giant, a marvel of modern engineering, cruising thousands of feet above the vast, dark expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, imagine its powerful engines falling silent, one by one, turning this magnificent machine into a massive, powerless glider. There is no runway in sight, no power to restart the engines, and a cabin full of unsuspecting passengers. This is not a scene from a movie. This is the true story of Air Transat Flight 236. Until that fateful day, commercial aviation history had never recorded an incident where a modern jetliner lost all its fuel mid-flight due to a leak. There was no manual for this, no checklist, no emergency protocol. The pilots were on their own, facing a crisis that no one had ever been trained for. With 306 lives hanging in the balance, our story begins on the night of August 23, 2001, at Toronto Pearson International Airport. The terminal was alive with the familiar sounds of summer travel families heading on vacation, couples embarking on a romantic getaway, students off on adventures. Among the crowd were the 293 passengers and 13 crew members of Air Transat Flight 236, a routine overnight flight bound for Lisbon, Portugal. For many, this was the start of a long-awaited summer holiday, a chance to reconnect with family and heritage. At 12:52 a.m. on August 24th, the Airbus A330 lifted off and began its journey, climbing to a cruising altitude of 39,000 feet. Inside the cabin, a sense of calm settled in. Dinner was served, movies played on the overhead screens, and the gentle hum of the engines lulled children to sleep. The cabin lights were dimmed, and the world outside was a blanket of stars over the endless ocean. Everything was perfectly normal, but in the cockpit, a series of seemingly small anomalies was beginning to unfold, setting the stage for one of the most harrowing flights in aviation history. Unknown to anyone on board, a critical failure was already in motion, a ticking time bomb hidden deep within the aircraft's mechanics. The plane was bleeding fuel, slowly at first, then with alarming speed. The root of the problem traced back 9 days earlier. During a routine maintenance check, mechanics had discovered metal particles in the right engine's oil system, a clear sign of internal wear. The decision was made to replace the engine. The replacement, borrowed from Rolls-Royce, was an older model than the one it was replacing. While outwardly similar, its internal fuel and hydraulic tube fittings were different. Under pressure to get the aircraft back in service, and with the service manual proving difficult to access, the maintenance crew made a critical error. They installed a hydraulic pump from the old engine onto the new one, which led to a mismatch with the fuel lines. A service bulletin explicitly warned that these parts were not interchangeable and must be replaced as a set. But this vital instruction was overlooked. The mismatched tubes were now in constant contact, rubbing against each other with every vibration of the engine. A tiny, L-shaped crack formed in the fuel liner crack that would soon grow into a catastrophic leak. In the early morning hours of August 24th, as Flight 236 soared over the Atlantic, the crack gave way. Fuel began to gush out at a staggering rate of 13 metric tons per hour. Modern aircraft like the A330 are equipped with countless sensors, but astonishingly, there was no direct sensor to detect a fuel leak. The first sign of trouble was a fuel imbalance warning in the cockpit. Captain Robert Pitch and First Officer Dirk Dejager were faced with a confusing situation. Believing it to be a sensor malfunction a far more common issue, they consulted their checklist. Tragically, they made a decision that would worsen the crisis exponentially. Following a procedure from memory instead of the correct checklist for this specific warning, they opened the crossfeed valve between the wing tanks. Their intention was to balance the fuel load, but instead, they created a pathway for fuel from the full tank to flow directly to the leaking engine. The fuel loss doubled. The situation was now spiraling out of control. Realizing the gravity of their fuel loss, the pilots declared a fuel emergency and made the critical decision to divert to the nearest available runway. Leiden Air Base in the Azores Islands, a remote Portuguese archipelago in the middle of the Atlantic. At 6:13 a.m., the right engine, starved of fuel, flamed out and shut down. The aircraft shuddered. 13 minutes later, as the last drops of fuel were consumed, the left engine also failed. At 34,000 feet, Air Transat Flight to 36 was now a glider. The cockpit displays went dark. The cabin lights flickered and died, plunging the passengers into a terrifying darkness and silence. The only sound was the wind rushing past the fuselage. Panic began to ripple through the cabin. In this moment of total power loss, a small, four-bladed propeller deployed from the aircraft's belly, the Ram Air Turbine, or RAT. This tiny generator, powered by the airflow, provided just enough emergency electricity to power the most critical flight instruments and hydraulic systems. For the pilots, it was a lifeline. They had one chance, and only one chance, to guide this 200-ton glider to a safe landing. There would be no go-around, no second attempt. In the cabin, the flight attendants, trained for emergencies, but never one like this, moved with calm professionalism. They instructed passengers on brace positions and how to use their life jackets, preparing them for a possible ditching in the ocean. Fear was palpable. Passengers wrote farewell notes to their families, held their loved ones tight, and prayed. The minutes stretched into an eternity, each one filled with the terrifying uncertainty of their fate. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, Captain Pitch, a seasoned pilot with over 16,800 flight hours, was in the fight of his life. Using the limited instruments available, he performed a series of graceful S-turns, carefully managing the aircraft's speed and altitude to extend their glide as far as possible. He had to calculate the perfect glide path, factoring in wind, weight, and distance, to hit a tiny runway on a remote island he had never flown to before. After an agonizing 19 minutes of silent gliding, the runway at Leiden Air Base appeared through the darkness. The landing was violent. Without engine power for reverse thrust, the aircraft touched down hard and fast. The tires burst under the immense pressure, sending sparks flying across the runway. A small fire broke out in the landing gear, but was swiftly extinguished by emergency crews. The aircraft screeched to a halt just feet from the end of the runway, and then silence, followed by a wave of relief and applause. Against all odds, every single one of the 306 people on board had survived. The evacuation was chaotic, resulting into serious and 16 minor injuries. But it was a miracle. They had made it. The subsequent investigation laid bare a chain of failures. A maintenance error born from mismatched parts and a missed bulletin. A flawed checklist procedure that exacerbated the leak, and the lack of a dedicated fuel leak warning system. Captain Pitch, despite some controversy over a past criminal conviction, was hailed as a hero. His extraordinary skill, calm decision-making, and years of experience had turned a certain disaster into one of the most remarkable survival stories in aviation history. The story of Air Transat Flight 236 is a powerful testament to the human element in aviation. It shows that even when technology fails and procedures fall short, the skill and courage of well-trained pilots can make the difference between life and death. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as incredible as we did, please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories from the world of aviation. We'll see you in the next video.